In the last few years, dealership acquisitions have been through the roof. And you, as a dealership employee, should very well know if you're working for a progressive dealer or not. You can just look to the data, to understand if you are or not, because the ones who are mass acquiring, and I am absolutely blessed to be part of the Castle Automotive Group, who has grown substantially in the last few years, those are the dealer groups that are growing. There's nothing coincidental about the fact that when you look at those dealerships' ad strategies, the way that they approach the market as a company, as to the consumers, to the industry, that they're taking advantage of everything in front of them.
Imagine this. Your dealership is on the verge of either leading a tech revolution or being left in the digital dust. Welcome into Facts Not Feelings, where today we are diving deep in the pulse of automotive innovation. I'm your host, Brooke Furniss, and with us is the visionary Giancarlo Montenegro, who is the Director of Marketing Technology at Castle Automotive Group, here to unravel how emerging vehicle technologies, vendor agnosticism, and the daring speed to test new AdTech and Martech can redefine success or spell obsolescence for today's dealer. Stay tuned, because this episode could very well chart the future course of your business. Giancarlo, welcome into the show.
Thanks for having me, Brooke. I appreciate it.
Hey, we were talking back in March. I was like, man, I have had you on my list for so long, so I'm so excited to kick this off and finally have on the show today, and to everyone learn from you. Like, you were, first time I met you, I was like, man, he is wicked smart. Like, I want to be associated with this guy.
I appreciate it. No, I mean, our space is filled with wildly talented people, and it's a fun space to be in, but I really appreciate the time today.
You're very welcome. Well, let's dive into this bad boy. So, vendor agnosticism, which is a word I've had to say multiple times, because I say agnostic, but you add agnosticism. I'm like, I'm going to screw that word up, and I've said it so many times. But back to that, it's a term that is so near and dear to my heart. It's how my whole company is. We are vendor agnostic, so it's something that I cherish more than probably just about anything in the space. But can you explain its importance in automotive marketing and how it influences dealer and vendor relationships?
Yeah, absolutely. So as it pertains to vendor agnosticism, see, I struggle with it just like you.
It's not easy.
It boils down to removing the two main layers of vendor fiduciary friction, right? And so for a very long time, and you and I are both aware, the vendor-dealer relationship was very much centered around budget. And the dynamic of these contracts were built around percentage of spend or management fee spend, right? So you as a vendor, not you, but in this hypothetical, you as a vendor were incentivized to get me as the dealer to spend more, because then I would bring more money back to my company. That doesn't lead to a fiduciary relationship. So the more progressive vendors in our space, and to be fair, it's a large proportion of them, have moved to flat rate. And so they're not incentivized to move your budgets up, down, sideways, or other for financial gain. And it actually, it provides a added level of trust in the communications there. However, to a lesser degree, you're still dealing with the reliance on the information that they're giving you. Because while they're not incentivized to grow your budgets or, on a monthly basis, retention then becomes that much more important, and rightfully so. And so while we have a fantastic, list of high-end quality vendors in our space, we're still reliant on them quite often to tell us how our dealership's doing. And so where the vendor agnosticism does come in is having that partner to validate the information, to help you tell your own story, own your data, and make decisions internally, with the confidence that you need in 2024 in this wildly ever-changing ecosystem.
Amen. I think we're just done with the show at that point. So we're done. No more. We did everything on that one question. No, but it is like, especially obviously you're in the dealership, when you go and look at your data, whether it's GA4, whether it's your whatever it may be, And I've seen too often the dealer's just like, well, I'm 100% reliant on whatever they're telling me. Or if a vendor is using a proprietary dashboard, I'm relying on that. I'm like, no, you need to know enough to be able to hold them accountable, to inspect what you expect, or hire someone that can do that for you, to really look at it and say, okay, they're using, now that they're no longer views, properties are now pretty much turned into views, but that's a whole other story. But they're using property 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and that we never set one up. Well, do we even have the access to see what's going on? I was at work with the dealer this morning and going through and saying, hey, we're looking at this. You've got 2 people over here telling you 2 completely different stories. And unfortunately, none of that's even funneling into GA4. So I don't know where they're getting this information, because they very well can be making it up, or they're using their own dashboard, which that's a whole other conversation itself. But really going through and say, who is benefiting from this? And I'll say it as well, where we are seeing more go flat rate, and thank goodness for that. Also look at the fees, because a lot of times I have seen, and I'm sure you have as well, let's make that bill as complicated as possible, so you don't know you're getting charged. And that, oh my gosh, that's a hot button with me.
Absolutely. No, you're 1,000% correct.
Drives me crazy. So even though there's not a fee, they could, that's a flat rate, they can use that fee to then subsidize everything else. And also, if you don't have access to, I'll say, ownership of your AdWords, that's another one. How do you know that $1,000 is actually going to the correct terms? Are they negative keywords in there? Are they buying your name? Are there little things like that? Are they spending $1,000 just to buy your own name? Little things like that to really understand, are they agnostic, or are they only looking out for themselves versus the client?
No, precisely. And, luckily with, the changes in technology in and outside of our space, it's becoming harder for those vendors to survive. But, you and I still both see and hear these stories on a regular basis. I mean, at the end of the day, I'm sorry, but while some vendors may have some pseudo-proprietary access, at the end of the day, they're media buyers, typically within Google or Meta, to media behemoths. And there is just about no good reason why I, as a dealer, should not have access to my own data in this day and age. That there simply isn't. So you're preaching to the choir.
I figured as much, and it is still shocking to me how often I see this. And I will go say as far to say is that it's not just, we'll talk about GA4 a lot. We talk about Facebook Meta. Also, go and look at your search console. It is still shocking to me that how many dealers don't even know who owns it. And it could just be the ad agency. It could be the IT company. And they're like, oh, so it's never hooked up. And so I'm like, once again, how are you getting this data reporting off of Search Console if it's not even hooked up? Like, how are you getting this?
1,000%.
Fun times. All right. So let's dive into opportunity cost a little bit here. So can you illustrate what dealers might gain in market competitiveness and customer engagement with early adoption of new AdTech and Martech?
Well, sure. I think to understand that, we need to expand on what we were just talking about before in understanding the ad ecosystem, at least digitally. 80 to 90 cents of every dollar that we're spending, not at Castle, but in the industry, is going to one of 2 companies. It's either going to Google or it's going to Meta. That's just the name of the game. And so when you're talking about such concentrated, disproportionate influence over the advertising ecosystem, the ad auction system, the ad inventory system, if one of these 2 companies puts a new advertising, a new piece of ad tech in front of you, of course they're going to incentivize you to use it. If not in the form of ad credits, it'll be in the form of efficiencies. And the reason is because they want to turn that fire hose on, because they need to gather as much data as possible to make a decision about this advertising tool. I mean, this has been the case since, and I've personally been involved with, this as it pertained to Facebook Marketplace before it existed, for dynamic ads for auto, which is now AIA, before that existed. And you'll see an amazing return. But once again, the potential for outsized gain when you're talking about the Google, the Meta, and even now the Amazon, who is emerging as a massive player in our space, it's almost always worth it. Is it always going to pan out and be the next greatest thing? No, absolutely not. But that's why you, as a marketing or variable ops or however it's set up in your group leader, need to be comfortable with having those conversations with ownership and leadership about having that culture of testing and learning frequently. Because it's not like AdTech or Martech are slowing down in the slightest. In quite honesty, it's if anything, it's accelerating more than it ever has before. And so the potential to be, quote unquote, left in the dust is just continuing to expand exponentially.
Amen. And oddly enough, like if we talk about this, since AI took off, it was always there, but since it took off, last year, I'm sure you've seen that. I'm guessing you've seen this at your dealerships as well. But Bing, like, used to be like we all laughed at Bing, and like, yeah, well, unless you're in the DC area because you've got all the Pentagon and everything in Microsoft world. But Bing was just like, nah, don't worry about it. And all of a sudden, when I look at it now, I look across the nation. I'd talk to not just my clients, but colleagues as well, and say, hey, are you seeing the same thing where Bing engagement is just skyrocketing? Well, it's because of AI. Like, and people are going to Bing because it was already built in, it was free to do. So looking at saying, okay, are we allocating budget to that? And if so, does the individual or the partner or the agency, the vendor, whatever you want to call them, do they really know what they're doing, or are they just saying they do and throwing money at it? Because I can tell you across the board, the Bing is just skyrocketing. Are you seeing that at your stores at all?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll be honest, we're very fortunate to have a very thoughtful suite of marketing partners internally and externally. And so when I was approached about, testing in, Microsoft Bing, I was skeptical to say the least, right? Because, Bing had kind of been, the bit of a punchline for so long. But it really does illustrate, that exact point of these dynamics are going to shift in truly substantial ways, be it within search, within, social, other ad platforms that we're not talking about currently. There is going to be that movement. It's not, we endured a very long period of, basically a duopoly domination, but that's slowly starting to erode. And out of that comes these opportunities like we're talking about.
Yeah. So with that, what are some innovative tools or approaches in tech that dealers should consider testing sooner than later?
Honestly, I think the answer to that is within the question. We talk about in tech. I think that, I know that in tier 3 auto, it's a large industry. Automotive overall is a large industry. However, when you take a step back and you look at the advertising ecosystem from a far more macro environment, we're a fraction of a fraction, right? When you talk about consumer goods or travel, we're talking about billions and billions of dollars. So there are things to be learned outside of our industry. And that's where the time and education really needs to be, in my personal opinion. Take, for example, just for personal context, I spent a couple of years away from automotive to work in a large agency in New York. From there, I had the resources to activate media on platforms that we just simply wouldn't as dealers. However, taking those learnings and taking those methodologies of looking to see what else is out there and what, really has been crucial to the successes that we've had at Castle in testing out other platforms and testing other types of ad inventory that, we would have lost significant potential market share during these pivotal moments that we've had in our industry the last few years had we not taken the leap and made those tests. So I hate to say it, but it's about keeping your ear to the ground outside of our industry as well, and understanding that we are such a small fraction of what's really out there and what there is to tap into.
Amen. And that is something I see and experience so often. We get so focused on automotive. And I love this industry. I also know for the most part, we're a bit behind the times. And that's putting it, I think, kind of lightly, just a wee bit there. And I remember talking to Kevin Fry and how he takes his entire team, or the those that need to be there, to outside TikTok or social media or other conferences or, whatever meetings about how to best utilize things. Because by the time it gets to us, especially from a social standpoint, like we're just unfortunately a little bit behind the times on that one, to know, okay, I'm going to go here. I'm going to go here. I just saw recently, I think it was Brian Ortega and James Klaus, and that all of them were at another type of streaming convention that automotive probably wasn't a big part of it, but knowing what is happening outside and how can we take that and best utilize it in our industry and capitalize on it. And I know you guys do a great job. Like, you guys always seem to be ahead of the curve on whatever you're doing.
I mean, I was about to say, I don't want to make it sound easier than it is, because it's not. It's almost a full-time job trying to keep up, right? And when you or I log into LinkedIn, I'm sure the first 20 things we see are tier 3 automotive related. Mainly because that's the industry you work in. The other half being because, there is such a close-knit community, and, you really do develop those friendships and, partnerships and relationships, which is great. But it's kind of hard to get out of the echo chamber. But it's necessary. It's absolutely necessary for growth.
Oddly enough, as I logged in LinkedIn today, and I've got my, the podcast stuff that's going, and I was going to post an article, and I was in between two. There was one about Tesla and some stuff, and there was another one. And I go, oh, man, I really like this article, but it has absolutely nothing to do with automotive. But it's in the grand scheme of digital marketing. Yeah, there's something to be had there. And so it is, like you said, it's like, and I ended up going to the Tesla thing. I put the other on a back burner. I was like, I'll post this later. But really looking at, I think one of them was about like ransomware like that. And it's like where that's not directly, it does impact us 100%. And at some point I will post it. But you do go to that and you're like, but is it tier 3? Does it really have to do with it? But is it? Yeah. So I agree with that 100%.
Absolutely. And hey, when it comes to those decisions, we're never going to get right all the time. You just got to trust your gut, right?
And they're going to fail. And then you learn from the fact that I just failed miserably, and I'm not going to post that again. So
learn, Brooke. Test and learn. Yeah. That culture and that mindset, everything's going to be all right in the long term.
I was talking to Sam Vukas the other day, and we were talking about when people are A/B testing in there. And while it's great to A/B test, but understand, is that in a vacuum? Because you might be testing something and all that you're testing is coming from a paid search versus organic. Well, then it's not a true A/B test then. So really understanding when you're doing that, yes, please use data to back up any decision you're making, but understand and be able to extrapolate what the data is telling you, which is, that's a whole other show in itself. But I was like, that's a really good point. Like, a lot of people don't think of, they clicked on this or this ad's working. Well, but is it only working for a certain demographic? I guess.
Oh, trust me, I could have a very long monologue about A/B testing and, how everyone just calls everything an A/B test. And, you really do need to isolate that one parameter. And if it's anything but that, if it's anything beyond that scope, I'm sorry, it's not an A/B test. Sure, you call it a test, but Sam Lucas, as a good friend of yours and mine, wildly intelligent person. And, we've had those conversations as well. And it's about data integrity.
Amen to that one. So how can dealers quantify, which is always a fun one to try to quantify anything, but quantify opportunity costs associated with either going too quickly or way too slowly of an adoption of these technologies? And what metrics or indicators should they be looking at?
I think it's I would love to be able to put out a media formula in front of you with an Excel, a little VLOOKUP that, you think back to your budget and, that's how you do it. But that's just not how it works, especially because, what we're talking about are opportunities within, data validation, media planning and buying, reporting, like all these different components that we don't necessarily put a dollar sign next to on our day to day. But you have to think about it, or I know I say this a lot, but I like to take a step back and kind of view this from a greater lens. In the last few years, dealership acquisitions have been through the roof. And you, as a dealership employee, should very well know if you're working for a progressive dealer or not. And if you can just look to the data, to understand if you are or not, because the ones who are mass acquiring, and I am absolutely blessed to be part of the Castle Automotive Group, who has grown substantially in the last few years, those are the dealer groups that are growing, right? There is a mass consolidation occurring, and there is nothing, there's nothing coincidental about the fact that when you look at those dealerships' ad strategies, the way that they approach the market as a company, as, to the consumers, to the industry, that they're taking advantage of everything in front of them, right? So there's really, like I said, there's nothing coincidental about it. The opportunity cost goes far, far greater than the marketing budget, I guess is what I'm saying in summary.
Yeah. And you are also very, as anyone that does, if you don't know them, you're going to get to know them through all this, but you're really big on, hey, let's take a bite of the apple sooner than later. Obviously, making sure that it's going to, our people and process in place, it's going to influence that, make it for the positive. But you really do take it that step to say, I don't want, it's not the fear of being the FOMO, but understanding that this is going to help our people and process. Why would you not do it? Like, that's it. Why wouldn't you? So I applaud that, because there's not and going into this next question here is the other side of that, is that because our industry is so resistant to change and it becomes such a significant barrier, you all do a really good job at that. So how can the dealers overcome this internal pushback when adopting new technologies?
What I've found in my time, both on the vendor side and as a dealer, is that, there's this old stereotype of dealers, being stuck in their ways and not wanting to try out X, Y, or Z. However, what I've found is that tends to simply be a bridge in communication. I come from a media background. I didn't come up in a car dealership. I've never sold, on the floor a day in my life, although I probably should. But I have learned, sometimes the hard way, how to communicate with these general managers, these owners, these dealer principals. This is why we're doing this. This is happening one way or another. And I care about your business. I view your money as mine, and I want us to succeed. Once again, I think a lot of this does boil down to culture as well. I am insanely lucky to have the boss I have in Joe Castle, who, I've known for a number of years at this point, who himself, grew the group from a single point dealership, to a 5-6 point dealer group before I joined, through leveraging the latest technologies. He understands that, and he's seen the results himself. And when you start seeing those results and you understand that the technology is doing nothing but moving faster, you're going to get a lot less resistance. So it's about having those open components of dialogue, showing and being as transparent as possible throughout the process. And you're going to reduce friction over time to the point where there really isn't much of any, because you continue to prove that you are advocating on their behalf continually.
Yeah, and I love that you brought up about, hey, not all the industries like that. Yes, there's a chunk of dealerships and personnel out there that are very resistant. But I can personally say, I have one group of mine right now that it is just, how can we improve? How can we improve? How can we improve? We may not be the best at what we're doing, and we get that. There's always room for improvement, but it's always, hey, I saw this new technology, and they'll run it by me first and say, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? Like, let's walk it back before we ever put anything on the site. How will this improve everything? And it has been so cool just to watch in a short amount of time what has happened since that mindset has switched to be like, okay, we can do this better. We can do this better. We can bring on this piece of technology and maybe get rid of 3 other ones because we have duplicates of so many different things. And this one thing is going to make it so much easier because now we're not logging into 7 different systems. Or, whether it's the sky's the limit on that. But that is, I do like that you brought that up, because it's so many dealers are progressive and they get lumped into this dinosaur mentality. And it's not everyone's like that. We definitely have incredible dealerships out there that are doing a phenomenal job with that. So thank you for bringing that up. Really appreciate that.
Absolutely. I mean, hey, I get the honor of being on this show, but, it's something that we continue to need to work on ourselves. It's not something that you can kind of set it and forget it, because as soon as you do, the things once again change and then you get left behind. So it's about adopting that mentality, internally throughout your dealer group.
Amen. And then the set and forget thing, that one always, I'm like, I've yet to see technology that literally you can set and forget and never touch it again. Like, it just doesn't work that way. I mean, I feel like back a little bit, Meta ads were like that for a little bit. Facebook ads were like that for or Google ads. And I still see people just put it on there and never touch it again. I'm like, you understand that you are banking on the system to work 100% of the time, all the time, and never screw up. Like, you've got to go in there, and whether it's creative fatigue or all these different things, but I don't think there is a set it and forget it at this point. Like, not anymore.
No. And, I've, like you, have gone and done countless audits, on behalf of, dealers who were friends or, former partners, right? And you'll find lost dollars coming out of every single hole to the tunes of tens of thousands in months, because we as dealers do have, considerably healthy budgets for, community businesses. And so the opportunity for lost dollars, grows as budgets do. But I'm sure you see it all the time, and it's wildly frustrating that we're still having that conversation. But luckily, it's less and less so than it was once upon a time.
Yeah, and once you can pull back that curtain and you can see the wizard behind the curtain, it's like, oh my God, I had no idea. And then it's like, okay, what can we do now to, one, get it back, and then two, to make sure this never happens again? Like, I love when that mindset switches, or you can just see the light bulb go on. I was like, wait, I thought I had to spend $100,000 a month on digital, on Google. No, you don't. You really don't. But we can still, if you want to spend that, let's just spend it. You're getting more ROI for your money there. So yeah, we could go on story upon story of the number of dollars that are being thrown out the window. So in the context of our word of the day here is vendor agnosticism, how should dealers approach strategic partnerships and vendor selection to ensure they are leveraging the best possible technologies?
Yeah, it goes back to my initial answer on this topic, and that is, I really do focus on those layers of fiduciary friction. What is stopping a business from acting and communicating in a way that is for the benefit of us as the client? And so, we talk about the financial incentives and, moving to a simplified flat fee model. And then in addition to that, for us, it's really their commitment to transparency. We talked about how there is no need to have our data siloed away from us, regardless of what platform we're on. There just isn't a excuse or reason, and you and I have heard them all, that justifies us not having access to our data. For us, the biggest bar of entry, and I understand it is a bit of a bar, is that we do leverage a CDP currently. And, and our CDP of choice is Orbi. And so we're lucky that our suite of marketing partners all integrate into Orbi for that data validation purpose, for that level of transparency, in addition to being able to see it, directly on our side as well, on the client end. But for us, it really is just, if we can remove those two levels to the fiduciary friction, then we're open to having those conversations, because those are the people that we want to work with as we continue to grow.
So this was not on the script at all, but I'm going to ask it to you. So you've got Orbi. Are you finding that certain players are not wanting to play in the sandbox together? And if so, are you saying, okay, since you don't integrate, or you're not choosing to participate, we're going to cut ties with you?
We haven't necessarily cut ties for that reason. Okay. It's more of a barrier to entry for net new vendors. I will say that we have only received friction on that point from our current partners for one or two partners, and they were smaller partners, and we knew that they had a bit of a predisposition to not wanting to work with some of our friends in the industry. But by and large, it's actually been a really positive experience to see all these vendors come together and to kind of merge the data in ways where we can parse and understand our customers, the customer journey, the traffic, the leads, the everything from a unified singular experience that we get to own. And so it's actually been an extremely positive experience. If we had a set of different partners, I'm sure the friction would have been much higher. But luckily, my partner, my team, and I have worked extremely hard to have the partners that we do.
I love hearing that, and once again, I figured that was the case, but I kind of wanted to tee that up for you, because too often we hear that, oh, no one works together. I'm like, well, actually, people do work together. There are definitely, I'll call them vendors that will not. When you have true partnerships, they will. Because at the end of the day, we all get the opportunity to serve the client, which in this case would be Castle. We get that opportunity, and we should really value that, to be like, hey, whether you are in direct competition to me or you're not, we can still work together because we're both serving the client. And that's really what the mindset needs to be. So I love hearing that. And having a CDP, you got to have a lot of different, there's a lot of irons in the fire, to say the least. So that is very impressive. I love hearing that people are working together. Makes my heart sing.
There's still a little ways to go. It's early in the CDP game as well, right? As a vendor, if I was one, I'm sure I would approach that initially with some skepticism, because we have had to deal with bad actors, in this space, and honestly, it happens even more outside of our space. So it's understandable, but hopefully that the adoption from some of these larger, more progressive dealer groups will kind of do away with that as a pain point, and but yeah, by and large, once again, a positive experience.
That's what I like to hear. All right, so we're going to look in the future here a little bit. I always like to say, get your little magic 8-ball out. How do you predict the landscape of automotive marketing will evolve with these technology advancements?
It's really funny. I've been asked this for the last decade fairly frequently, and honestly, the more things change, the more they stay the same, right? The answer really doesn't change. If we look at where we were a decade ago versus where we are now, you would talk about the changes of being able to hyper segment your audiences, your ad tech, your reporting technology, your attribution technology, and how all of this just continues to improve while the technology improves. And like we've said throughout this conversation, that trajectory is not going away. But it's all about what you as the dealer then do with that data to make it worth the investment that you're putting in. And so I think that there will continue to be the improvements in AdTech and Martech, without a doubt. And I think that in addition to that, there will be a greater focus on how the dealers not only action upon this from a marketing perspective, but how dealers integrate across their group, with your BDC partners, with your fixed and variable, executives, and how you're actioning on this to make for a cohesive customer experience, bridging the gap between media metrics and actual consumer journeys.
Man, there's so much to unpack there. I'm not very sure where to begin on that one. That was just, if you're listening right now, one, you should be. If you're not, I don't know why you're not. Or watching, go back and rewind that, because you just dropped so much knowledge right there. Man, coming in hot, man. Right now it's a Monday, where this will drop on a Thursday, but holy crap, on a Monday be dropping that. We were just talking. It's been a little bit of a crazy Monday, so I'm impressed with that answer there.
I appreciate it. Hey, like I said, it's a crazy Monday, so I've had an extra cup of tea, so I'm good to go, Brooke.
Yep. I think right now I've got the water over here, but same thing. I'm on the third thing of tea at this point, so we are good to go. All right. So, what practical advice would you give dealers who want to be proactive in testing new technology but are unsure where to even start?
We talked about, the community aspect of this industry. And while I think people who aren't in the day-to-day operations within Tier 3 automotive tend to view a very stereotypical general manager, owner, marketing director, what have you, wanting to keep everything to yourself and, being a little paranoid about what your competitors are doing. I'm sorry, but we operate in such a vast information ecosystem where if someone wants to find something out, they're going to find it. That's just the way it is. And so, I've honestly been honored to be reached out to by dealers who I've worked with in previous lives, or been referred to, and vice versa. Because I saw something they like, or they see something of ours that they like, and being able to have those conversations 9 times out of 10, those are some of the most transparent, open conversations that you're going to have. And are you going to have it with your biggest competitor down the street? Absolutely not. But we have thousands of dealerships, hundreds and hundreds of skilled, seasoned, professionals in advertising and marketing and in the technology side of this business, who are willing to have those conversations and not expect anything in return. I think that's one of the greatest things about working in the space that we do. I've never seen a dealer or partner shy away from opening up and bridging, those conversations to occur. And so I would genuinely encourage, people to tap into those networks, because, as you know, just about everybody knows everybody. The 7 degrees of separation, it's probably 3 in this industry max.
Yes.
So it's a really unique thing about this sector, about this community that, I would encourage dealers to tap into.
And I this is something that once again I also just love about this industry, is that you can tap anybody on the shoulder. Our mutual friend Dan Moore, I mean, the number of times that he is, whether it's just like, Dan, I'm gonna snap right now, talk me off the ledge. And it can be personal or professional, but I can say from a professional standpoint, I don't know where I would be without him. Like, I am always tapping him on the shoulder. I'm like, so I'm thinking about this. What do you think? And as you know, Dan's gonna be completely honest with you, like, that is a horrible idea, Brooke. Why don't you take it this way? Or have you thought about this? Or he's just there as a standing board, and we need those people to be like, okay, I have this idea. And I remember in one conversation in particular, I think Dan said 2 words the entire time. And I was like, so you just came to this all on your own. And I was like, yeah, thanks for being there for me, buddy. Yes.
Exactly right. That's exactly.
You do need those people in your life.
You do. I mean, otherwise, this job can be very isolating if you didn't, right? I mean, you can spend weeks upon weeks looking at your own internal data and trying to make sense of something that you think you see, but unless you're willing to continually open yourself up to the conversations, and see what's out there, see what everyone else is experiencing, you're not making the most of it.
Yeah, and it is like I am ever grateful. I had a conversation with a friend this morning, and it was more on a personal level. He just goes, so of all the people you chose, you always choose me. I was like, well, what I need a laugh, just to, like, it's a Monday. I need a laugh to get through it. Like, this is, that's the person I'm going to call. So you need those people. And I will also say is I also know, like, early on, I always thought that, I can't reach out to that person. They're so much bigger than I am. And so that was that fear and this, I wouldn't even say pride, but it's just like, I didn't know I could. And once you get more into it and you do it the first time, then that person will introduce you to the next person. And it's just amazing the doors are open to know that, hey, I can now reach out to whomever it may be. So don't be afraid to reach out to someone. The worst that's going to happen is that they ghost you or they tell you no. Like, those are the 2 worst things. Like, just reach out to the person.
And most of these are stories we tell ourselves, right? It's that imposter syndrome of, this person's too busy to talk to me, or, feeling some type of way about yourself. But you're right. 9 times out of 10, they're taking that call. They're willing to have that conversation because, so much is changing. They want context and perspective as well. These conversations 9 times out of 10 are very symbiotic. It really is important for all of us, to be tapping into our networks.
Yes. And that's, like I said, that's a whole show in itself, but please do. So let's go back to the emerging technology here a little bit. So with emerging vehicle technologies changing the game completely, how do you see these innovations altering dealer responsibilities, especially in customer interaction and service?
So this is a question that I'm glad we're talking about, but also justifies a completely different hour-long conversation. Because I have a feeling you're going to be talking about this for a long time. We're at the tip of the iceberg. I just got a new car personally. It's an EV. It's my first one. Frankly, I love it. I know there's it's a polarizing topic, but it's like driving a computer, and that's the way you have to view it. And with that comes a shift in mindset about your vehicle, because your vehicle is gaining so much more access to what you're doing behind the wheel, the way you're driving, and that information, depending on what OEM you're with, depending on, what packages you've signed up for, that data can be packaged up and sold like every other piece of data about you. We're hearing these stories, start to come out anecdotally about, people who go to re-up on their insurance and it goes up 3-4 fold because of the data passed back by a vehicle, that was sold to an insurance company. And that's just one microcosm of this. Once again, as the technology, we talk about technology advancing, for us in the digital advertising ecosystem, the technology in the vehicles has gotten tremendously impressive, but Lord knows where it's going to be when we're talking about the 2028, the 2030s, the 2032s, model years of these vehicles and the information that are going to be able to gather. And so, it's it's important for dealers to be as transparent as possible with their customers. I don't care if you're talking about technology or not, or you're talking about their payment, right? You need to have that because you need to build that trust, that rapport. But we as dealers also need, as these things do become more complex and go even over my head, of how we're going to communicate this out to customers and honestly protect them and their data. So, as a marketer, would I love to be able to, advertise to someone who's got, a final 5% of mileage left on their lease with the perfect message and the perfect offer to get them in the door tomorrow? Absolutely. And, that's the fun side, but there's another complete different side to it as well. And, if we're not operating in a customer-centric fashion, then, it's never really going to work. And so I guess that's my spiel on that. Why not?
I don't know if you know Andre Amico with Privacy for Cars. He's a CEO, founder of Privacy for Cars. That's something, I had him in the show. It was probably the first 20 episodes I did, 3.5 years ago. And we got this whole conversation of things that I didn't even think of that the car, because your car is your third screen. He goes, Brooke, every time I present, I say, okay, anyone want to give me their unlocked phone? Anybody want to do it? No, you're not going to give your unlocked phone to a stranger. Yet that is what we do with cars. And whether it's obviously EV, because they are so computer centric, that is a big portion of it. But even in my ICE vehicle, like when it came out, that I can't remember who put it out, but it was about the worst OEMs to violate privacy. And my brand was on there. I was like, this will 100% impact whether or not I buy when my lease comes up in January, whether I keep with that vehicle. Because I don't think I want to. And over 4 to 5 cars are resold with your personal data on it, which is just nuts.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, we talk about this for hours, but it's only going to get more and more insane. And it's just, we as dealers have some responsibility, but it goes far beyond the walls of that dealership.
Yes. Yeah. And yes. And I will just say, for those this is new to you, if you have a newer vehicle and it's got, like mine right now, I can start the car, I can locate it. Right now, there's state by state, it's going to changing, but it's coming on the dealer and the customer myself to delete that. Otherwise, if my car gets resold, I can go and see where the garage codes are. I can start the car. I can do whatever I want with the car. I can see now where there's all these different things. So just really take this seriously, because to your point, this is only going to just explode even more. That's not even good grammar there, but it's going to get a lot worse.
1,000% correct. We're just at the tip of the iceberg.
Yes. All right. So let's wrapping this up here a little bit. Is how do you see emerging vehicle technologies and now marketing strategies impacting the overall customer experience at the dealership?
Well, so like I alluded to earlier, it's really about bridging the gap between media metrics and real life experiences. So as we have the ability to continuously, activate more granular, first party segments or even third party segments, we need to be able to pass that information internally, because, when a customer calls and it's because they have 1,000 miles left on their lease, they want the same car, just 3 model years newer, they want to talk payment, versus someone who may have some credit challenges, they need to get into a car tomorrow, versus, the woman who wants to come in and buy the new vehicle fresh off the line, all cash. Those are 3 very different conversations. And, while we're able to target them very effectively from a marketing perspective and, activate those messages out in the ad ecosystem, if we're not then transcribing that internally and passing that along so that there is that much less friction in their experience engaging with your BDC, your salesperson, your sales manager, whomever, it's going to make for that much smaller of an expectation gap, which is maximizing the opportunity for a great value experience and a higher reputation, in your respective markets.
Yes. And I once again, the BDC portion I want to touch on, I like that you brought that up there, is I remember I was in the dealership, and the dealership had brought out a company that you could see everything, like to the point it was, I am fairly up to date, but I was like, man, I didn't know you could see this much stuff. This is pretty crazy. But the BDC was never trained appropriately on it. So they were full of calling the customer and be like, yeah, so I see that you're looking at and Toyota Corolla on blah, 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 blah. And the consumer's like, whoa, what the, are you calm down there?
Yeah.
And it's like, you got to have that conversation or the tech went rogue and it was bringing up vehicles that they thought the customer, I like vehicle. And they're for vehicles that hadn't been produced in like 20 years. And so they're calling the customer like, yeah, so we can get you in a Pinto if you like a Pinto. Like, what are you talking about right now? So having that conversation and going back and saying, okay, here's the process. This is how it worked. Great technology. But without that, man, yeah, we had a lot of angry customers, to say the least, on that one.
I can only imagine, hey, these things are never going to be perfect. Hopefully it doesn't go to that extreme at your dealership, but it's not going to be perfect, but it's going to continuously get better. And it's just a matter of when you're starting, are you going to be behind or not?
Amen. Giancarlo, we're at that point of the show where we're going to jump in to the lightning round with Giancarlo. So first and foremost, for those that are watching, you can see his QR code right down below here. But for those that are listening in podcast land, and obviously can't see the QR code right now, how can they get in touch with you and how can they find you?
Sure. My email is open to anyone and everyone's gmontenegro@castlecars.com. You can find me on LinkedIn. I am dangerously easy to find online with my unique name. So, like I said, I'm dangerously online. I'm easy to find, and I'm happy to connect.
And he's usually at a lot of different conferences as well. So if you're going to a conference, most likely he's going to be there. And he's probably speaking on top of that, let's be honest. So kind of a hot commodity, this gentleman over here. All right. So the name of the show is Facts Not Feelings. So whether it's in your professional life or in your personal life, how are you distinguishing facts from feelings?
Oof. I'm lucky enough I consider myself lucky. It can be a detriment, but I am a wildly analytical person, and I am now married to a wildly analytical person. So, for us, something that's wildly romantic is, going through all the spreadsheets that we make together. And so, when we talk about feelings versus facts, we've got it down on paper. So, that's really not too much of a concern in my day to day, to be honest with you. It's almost comical.
Okay. I like it. We're very similar that way. I'm like, give me a bunch of data and let me, numbers. Hey, I can work with this one.
Exactly.
Like, it's nothing necessarily the sexiest thing, but man, it's give me some data and I'm good to go.
I love confidence in decision making. And yes. Lucky that my partner does as well. It makes for a good dynamic.
That is it's a 100% a great partnership. Okay. If you could have any superpower, what's it going to be?
I feel like it's a basic answer. I'm going invisibility. Invisibility. I'm someone who gathers information and activates on it on the regular. And the more information that I have, I yearn for more information. And so invisibility, easiest way to do it, right? I don't know. I don't know what else to say beyond that.
I like it. I mean, sort of like reading people's minds. I was like, yeah, invisibility. That makes sense. I did not think it was going to go that direction when you said invisibility. I was like, oh, so he can like walk through walls or something like that. You're like, no, more data. I need more information.
Walk through doors still. It's fine. Or, if I don't want people to see me in my office or, I want to appear away for a while. So,
you don't enough when people are constantly coming in and out of there. So I get it. All right, so let's wrap up with what is something that most people wouldn't know about you?
Unless you got on a video call with me and saw my background, honestly, the time that I'm not spending working, for the group or with my wife, it's everything's very sports centric, particularly soccer. I actually grew up playing through college, briefly in Argentina, very, very long ago. And if you are at my house, on any given weekend, there's a 95% chance there's a game on the tube. So, massive soccer fan. It's a big part of who I am, and will forever be my first love.
I love that. I can't end with that question. I got to follow up with who's your team?
Chelsea. So, it's been a great existence, but a rough couple of recent years. We're young. We'll be back.
Okay, last question, I promise. What position did you play?
So I was actually a striker in college, which, usually surprises people as I stand a very vicious 5'8", going against a 6 foot some odd, center back. But, I was quick back in the day. These days, not so much, but that's all right. I had my fun.
That's okay. I was striker and left wing. That's usually what I end up being. So I hear you on that one. So I love it. All right, Giancarlo, thank you so much for being a part of the show. A Facts Not Feelings, super appreciative as always. It's just always such a pleasure speaking with you and learning from you. And I can guarantee the audience is going to feel the same way after they listen and watch this show. With that, everyone, you all know the drill at this point. Find a way to serve today. Find a way just to be the joy in someone's life, whether that is opening a car door, it can be a kind smile. Just do something to make someone's day a little bit better. And with that, everyone, we will see everybody next week.